So I went to Hartford, Connecticut and played in my second regional qualifier. I had a lot of fun, met a lot of really cool people, including a lot of you. That was really, really cool. And I'm excited for the next event, but this one wasn't mine. I had a bit of a difficult main event into a into a difficult post-regional rebound. And I learned a lot about the game, about filming, and how I'm going to approach this whole YouTube thing. But today I wanted to chat with you about my Hartford list. We'll share how I came to it, the considerations I made of different cards, how to sideboard with this deck, and some play patterns that'll be helpful for you in case you're interested in playing KaiSa at your locals. We'll discuss the best of Hartford list as well, how mine differed from his. We'll chat about Sinzari's list too, and how I'm going to approach prepping for the 25K that I'm heading to in 2 weeks. I'm anticipating uploading at least once per day leading up to that event, and then after that we'll probably figure out some kind of more reasonable schedule. If there's certain matchups that you guys want to see, like I'm already planning a Master Yi matchup video, then leave those in the comment section so I can know to give you guys some more advice and get some gameplay footage for you. Without further ado, let me show you the run. So this was my main event. I finished 412 out of, I think, 1900 and something, 1954. So I had some really difficult opponents, and unfortunately I misunderstood how good my deck list was in TE, and I think it's still playable. I also just got very unlucky with how my opponents were drawing on the day. I played a couple of Yis in the pre-regional, and it felt okay. I did only lose to Master Yis on the first day, but the match is still super approachable if you draw better than they do and if you roll the dice well. Every loss that I had was against a Master Yi. 4 of my 7 opponents were Master Yi players, and everyone that I lost, I won the first game and then lost game 2, lost game 3. It was just a double Rune Runner game. And double Camel with a bunch of support is very difficult for me to get over, especially if they get a ton of punch firsts. So they started with a bye into Sumakru's on Master Yi. I think that match probably should have been a 2-0, but I think I punted game 2. Luckily came back game 3 and was feeling pretty good. Going into the third round, I was like, finally, I get to play against some of the more rogue-like field, and I was hoping that my deck was better into the field than most other KaiSas, and I think it is. Like, if you notice, I had a ton of success throughout the weekend. I had so much struggle into Master Yi, more than I probably should have. Danish was a very kind player. It was very cool to meet him and play against him. But I think Rengar is very disadvantaged into KaiSa over a 3-game series. And if you have any experience in the matchup, it's quite KaiSa favored. Luckily, I had a couple of friends locally that started picking up the deck, so it gave me enough experience to play well enough to take that. And then going into round 4, undefeated, I paired into Challenger TCG Minwins, who is now one of my favorite players to play against. That was one of the most fun matches I have ever played. It was an incredible game, but game 3, his top decks just eked out the win for him. I think the level of gameplay was very high. One of the highest of the weekend that I played. And I wasn't even upset that I lost. I just had so much fun in the match. I hate losing, but at the same time, when I go to an RQ, I'm there for the opportunity to play against some really good players. And I always like the opportunity to play against Challenger TCG guys. But yeah, that was my first defeat. Going into round 5, I paired into a Rek'Sai, and I immediately knew that it was going to go my way. I had a Rain in the board specifically for yellow, and my main was already set up pretty well to handle yellow decks, and I had a ton of experience playing into them. Unfortunately for my opponent, he missed lethal, not because he miscalculated, but because he missed the Death Knell trigger for the Ferrous Forerunner, which is incredibly unfortunate. That was the first time I've ever seen somebody miss it. I played Watcher, and walked over his Forerunner. I played one more card and I passed turn. He took all of his beginning of turn steps and then noticed he didn't have his mechs on this field. I called over a judge and he said, yep, it's a Mr. Trigger. And I was disappointed to win that way. But at an RQ environment plus, it is what it is. If it was a Nexus Knight, of course I'm giving him the max, but in this environment you can't. I suspect it, even if he won that first game, I suspect it was likely for me to win out just because of my experience in the matchup. But it ended in a 2-0, moving at 4-1. Being 4-1 moving into round 6, I paired into H2 Juicy, who was the best of Victor at the event. That was another really fun game. He's a long-term Magic player, I think, and he plays super well. I was his last loss of the entire event. If he ended up beating me, I suspect he potentially would have top 8'd the event. But maybe I had to defeat him, so he had a better bracket run, maybe. I don't know. Brought rain in, and I don't think I saw it. Just out-tempoed, out-removaled. He even took... we played so quickly. We had so much time left after that match. He was a pleasure to play against, and nothing too crazy to talk about for the Victor matchup. I'm personally under the impression it's KaiSa favored, but a lot of KaiSas would disagree with me on that. Maybe it's just my list or how I play, or I'm just like used to it. You just got to know it's a point race and then beat them at their own game, and don't be afraid to kill recruits like they're real units. I also play more Bellows than most other KaiSa players, and double Bellows is very relevant, or having two Bellows is very relevant in the matchup. Round 7, I lost to Phalop, who is somebody who knows min wins pretty well. He mentioned he lives like 10 minutes from him, and I can't describe how poorly I drew in this matchup. I drew, I think, one Ferocious Forerunner over the course of the entire 3-match series, and if you don't draw as well as they do, it just cooks. I think I missed a turn 1 play going first. Like, it's just not my matchup. I was happy to get him to game 3, but very disappointed that I couldn't take that home. Giving my second loss for the event. I really didn't want to go into day 2 with 2 losses. I was really hoping to be undefeated by now, but I was in position of winning in and dropped the first one, and then paired into another Master Yi, and I was so disappointed. I didn't pair into any of my better matchups. Any Dianas. That was really what I was hoping to pair into, because I was pretty practiced in the matchup and it's quite favored for me. Outside of Victor, Rek'Sai, Rengar, it was literally just a bunch of Master Yis, which is too coin flippy for me. It is what it is. It was the most popular deck in the field, and I knew I was going to be playing into them. But that third game was so heartbreaking. Every loss to Master Yi, I believe, they had double camel, except maybe 1 or 2 games. Double camel with tons of buffs just prevented me from taking it home. In the third game of round 8, I conquered a 7. He held to 7. I had a Watcher plus another 2 or 3 might unit on the right, and he had just a Master Yi in base with no playable cards in hand. His draw for turn is a Discipline. He plays Discipline, draws. Yi is now 6. He draws into a crab, a Scuttle Crab. Plays that and draws into a Punch First. He puts the Punch First on the table, and I almost cried. The stress of being at the win and in position and then having your entire run end right there was just so... Yeah, it was so unfortunate. Yeah, it's hard to talk more about it because that was just where my run ended. So we'll move into my deck list. We'll talk about the Hartford Best of KaiSa deck list. I think it was Flamekiller, who was on my tails in Atlanta. So kind of exciting to see another really good KaiSa player take one home. Unfortunate for Sinzari, who was, I think, second based on breakers. And my good friend Will, who is also at this event and we talked a lot about list before we moved into it. Unsurprisingly, KaiSa Survivor is one of the best cards in the game. 4/4 in the champion zone 4-4-4 in the champion zone enables a lot of deck building where we don't have to put too many mid-range units in and we can just go top and low end. In theory, I ran with a pretty stock set of battlefields. This may have made it harder into Master Yi because Void Gate's irrelevant against Camel, and Candlelit helps them sometimes more than me, especially since I'm using it second and they can very reliably get on it. Rune split 7 and 5. No surprise here as we're running Time Warp. So when you have 10, you always have enough. And the only sequence where you don't have enough is triple water, like water into water into water. 8 and 8 and 8, I think. I think the only sequence you don't have enough blue. So this list looks a lot like my CCS 25k list because it's very much my main board from the CCS 25k. Every time I made changes to my list, I just kept coming back. And for the 2 weeks leading up to this event, forecasters were different, rocket barrage was different, quantity of yordles was different, cleave was different, bellows was different, smoke screens were eclipses. Like, we'll talk about all of the things we considered, but main board, pretty similar. Forecaster is an incredible consistency piece. For a big event, having consistently, or the ability to very consistently see what's coming up is pretty important. We're also not running the Starspring battlefield, so we don't necessarily need Inferno. If you are running that battlefield, you do want Inferno. And if you're running Inferno, you also probably want to be on Eclipse as well, so you can help defend that unit on field. Whereas Smokescreen, you're still giving it up. We'll look at the sideboard really quick, and then we'll talk about all of the cards that we considered. Rain was for yellow decks. It came up not at all. I had it in my hand once and just never casted it. It's also very relevant in the mirror and any other face-up decks where value matters. I'm a huge Rain fan. It just, not so fast, kind of scarred me from playing it, and then Abandon also scarred me from playing it. So I don't know if this is going to survive the slot or not, but it is highly relevant in the right matchups. Progress Day, highly relevant in the mirror, but also super relevant in the Ezreal Pike discard Bewitching Spirit decks. Up until this event, like literally the day before, I had 2 Progress Days in the side for the Bewitching Spirit decks. I swapped it out on Thursday for something else for Yordle, I think, and having the extra draw from this is highly relevant, and having this going second, it can be highly relevant, but I don't think I can keep lecturing Yordle in the side. It's just hard to justify the space because Progress Day is so needed against the discarding decks. I was kind of hoping to just dodge them, and I played one on the pre-rift and then just didn't see them after that for the rest of the weekend. Smites are highly relevant into any other Pharaoh's Forerunner decks. The Banishment prevents the Death Kneels from working, which also is highly relevant in the LeBlanc matchup. Having extra removal is another thing we don't necessarily ever complain about. And then Triple Turn to Dust, instead of having Thermos, was largely a anti-Aurora measure. And then also, if we're playing into Azir, using lower tempo spells that we can enable other things on our turn, like we can Turn to Dust into Hopeful, Turn to Dust into something else, is kind of nice. The huge downside to not having Thermal Beams is if there's a turn where you can hold up 5 runes, you can play Thermal Beam as a combat trick. It's not so fastable. You can't use Abandon. Well, you can use Abandon. Abandon and Hard Bargain are the only thing that stops them. And Windwall, which nobody uses. But if your Azir opponent goes for a push and accelerates Azir, brings all of their units, and you Thermal Beam and they don't have enough to get over your units, you just win the game on the spot. So Thermal Beam is probably going to come back in this side after this event, but Turn to Dust is significantly better in the Aurora matchup because if you Turn to Dust, you can still answer Dragon. If you have Turn to Dust and then Eclipse Falling Star or Smoke Falling Star, you have a significantly higher chance for winning the game. So, highly relevant. Other things that underperformed were Darius and Cleave, so we're going to approach those. Bellow's Breath is either like a king, like a staple that's super important in the matchup, or just absolutely like mid. And if we decide to move off of Void Gate, I'm more inclined to remove a copy or 2 of Bellow's Breath. Let's go over here and talk about the deck ideas. So other things we considered. Let's slide me over here. So So what other things did we talk about or consider? The staples. KaiSa Survivor never changes. There would need to be significant combo pieces to make blue KaiSa ever worth considering, and she's too expensive, and it just doesn't. The card almost will never see play, unless again there's like specific unique combo pieces that make sense. Falling Star is the KaiSa staple. We are the most efficient at using it. Hextech Ray is also a card that we kind of are the only people that can use. Hextech Ray going second, like 2-drop into Holding of Hextech Ray, is one of the most important cards to find going second, because you can swing tempo back in your favor and be like you're going first with a with an extra rune. The thing to consider is if you don't have it, you hold it up, right? So even going second, I would often use a 2-drop instead of a Lecturing Yordle just so I can hold up the rune. And good players will respect it. They won't want to push their 2-drop in to die for no reason. Some people will anyway, and sometimes you just kind of have to force them to have it, because if you're flipping a coin, you're more likely to miss than see it. I think it's like 48%. But it's almost always the play to push into Hextech Ray and let your 2-drop die. It just kind of depends on the circumstance. I'm probably always going to be on 3 Stupefy, but I can see a world where this is different. There's almost no reason not to want a one energy cantripping combat trick. Watcher could be at 2 or 3 depending on the meta. If the meta is too fast, we drop down to 2. And in some matchups, we really don't need them. Like, we don't love Watcher into Victor, for example. Forerunner is one of the best units in the game. Starcrossed is not a counter for Forerunner. If a player plays a 2-drop into Starcrossed, that is a 5 energy, 1 power rebuke, which is not a counter. It can be, especially if they're picking up their Bewitching Spirit, which they wanted to pick up anyway, or if they're picking up something with a significant enter the battlefield effect, like if they need to card draw and they pick up Crab. It can be relevant, but we can also just redeploy it on the next turn and not really mind. Most of the time, it doesn't matter. And if they're Star Crossing something else anyway, it shouldn't matter. And then Time Warp. Time Warp will exist in KaiSa for the foreseeable future. There's only one KaiSa list that I would expect not to run it, and it's the really aggro Detonate Sprite Fountain list, which is aggressive and fun and great to bring to a next night, but I don't suspect it's going to be good enough for our Q+ play. The units. So Plundering Poro is a consideration. Watchful Sentry's consideration, Inferna, and Students. These are like the 4 2-drops that I played with the most. And then Forecaster came back in literally like the week of the event. Student, highly relevant. In a field full of camels, the extra might can be super relevant. Cleave makes Student a 4 might unit, or sorry, a 6 might unit, which is awesome. And even bigger on Abandon Hall if your opponent is using Abandon Hall like one of my friends are on Yi. Inferna highly synergizes with the Star Springs. The ambush units in general are just highly relevant in those battlefields. And I think Inferna shines in a aggressive I want to attack meta where it's far less important for you to be in need of defense. Granted, she like outside of maybe Eclipse, it's very difficult for her to defend anything. So just be aware of that. If you're running Star Spring, you should be on probably 2 to 3 copies of this easily. Watchful Sentry is a cantripping 2-drop, so you kind of like it's the most obvious one to play. I think in Sinzari's list, he's also running this unit. And then my favorite turn 1 play, the Plundering Poro, where we play it turn 1, conquer with it, get a gold, and use it to save a rune, which compounds, because the earlier you play it, the longer that rune is relevant, up till a certain degree. You want to see Plundering Poros early. Watchful Sentries are kind of like a static unit that are good throughout the entire game, except they're like slightly weaker turn 1 compared to some of the other units because they can't really conquer over things if you happen to be going second. Granted, if you play Watchful Sentry and you conquer with it and hold up interaction, it makes it a lot harder for your opponents to push over you. And if they happen to push over you, you don't really care because you draw anyway. most of the time when I'm pushing Watchful Sentry, I don't care that it dies because I get to draw. And we talked Inferno there. Hopeful is one of the most efficient units in the game. I was between 2 or 3, and I just really love 3 for turn 2. Because if I had it my way, push 2-drop, reinforce with Noxus Hopeful, or push Watchful Sentry and then 2-drop like a Forecaster Vision into Noxus Hopeful and base. One of the most powerful turn 2 plays you can do going first, or even going second if you have the opportunity, because you can get a lot of value really early on. Hopeful's great at holds. It's so efficient. It's hard to justify not having max copies, but I did for a bit while I was experimenting with the Chakram Dancer. Chakram Dancer is one of the coolest units in the game that nobody knows about. And I was experimenting with it for a bit. If you have 2 units on a battlefield and your opponent watchers, and you respond with Chakram Dancer, you trade with a watcher, which is highly relevant for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it like destroys their tempo and they waste a turn. But also it helps force your opponent to miscalculate. Because if you hold up exactly 3 runes and they're like, okay, he's holding up Voidseeker, and you show them Voidseeker either earlier in the match or in a previous game within that match, and they either calculate Voidseeker and you show them Chakram Dancer, instead of 4, that's 5, because it's 3, and then each of your other units on that battlefield are +1/+1. So you either cause them to miscalculate, or they assume they can defy whatever you're about to play. So you're using a non-defiable combat trick. If they don't have buffs, sorry guys. And if it's not Watcher and they push onto a battlefield where there was some battlefields I actually had like 6 units sitting on it. And if you Chakram Dancer, that's +9, right? So it's one of those things that could shine kind of uniquely, but for me over the weekend, it kind of underperformed. Lecturing Yordle, drawing immediately, was one of the most relevant things over the weekend. Highly overperformed. I love this card. I don't think I can drop less than 2. I'd be surprised if I drop less than 2 for the next couple weeks while I'm playing it. Voidseeker is one of the most awkward cards in the deck. It's nice that it draws. It is very expensive though. It doing 4 is relevant for killing Vex, for killing opponent's Noxus Hovefuls, for killing Master Yi on a field. If it's defied, it feels super bad. Quick note, if something is defied or countered, Legion is still active, so you can, if your Voidseeker is defied, you can play Noxus Hopeful for 2 afterwards and not care. Smite in the main was kind of fun to try. Really good in LeBlanc. Just haven't seen enough of them to justify it in the list. Or, same reason it's in the sideboard for other Forerunner decks and other things we don't want to allow our opponents to cantrip. It is not a 4th Hex Techray because it can't be played going second turn, or turn 1 going second, where we're playing a 2-drop and holding up Hex Techray. It doesn't fit exactly the same niche as that does, but it's still relevant enough where if you're playing later on and you have more runes than you really need, then it's still kind of fine. So like in some ways it's the 4th one, which is one reason you can justify having one of them in the list, with Smite being one of them. Bellows is one of the best combinations with Watcher. I absolutely love Watcher Bellows. I cleared a 6, 12, 17 unit board. There was 7 units in base, 6 units in base, and a ton on a battlefield. I Watcher Bellowsed. And they were like, oh, I forgot about that combo. And your opponent forgetting things is awesome. Surprising your opponent is one of the best ways to win games. So if you're playing something that they haven't seen before and they can't calculate, you have a huge advantage on your opponent. Slot for Turn to Dust was Turn to Dust, Rocket Barrage, Singularity, Smite, Voidseeker. It just kept cycling between different things because I just wasn't satisfied with that slot for the majority of my experience. Turn to Dust can be completely dead in the wrong matchups, but it's also highly relevant in most matchups. The Diana that plays the gear that draw, like when you draw your second card of return, the frozen, what is that called? I don't know. Well, when you can get +2 when you draw a second time, Turn to Dust it. Totally fine. Using Turn to Dust against Aurora, highly relevant. One of the best cards in that matchup, of course. And it's highly relevant in killing boots for Irelia. The most important card in the matchup is their Swifties. And if you can take it out and still be able to develop something, highly relevant. Rocket Barrage can be used to kill Stella, though. Rocket Barrage can be used to kill Diana Lunari. Rocket Barrage can be used to kill Master Yi. That's the primary reason that slot belonged to Rocket Barrage in my main board instead of Turn to Dust. And it was fine. It actually, I think, one of the few overperforming cards on the day. I did kill a lot of things. Granted, I would rather Falling Star, Master Yi plus another unit, and then Stupefy to kill the Master Yi, which also comes up very frequently. Cleave underperformed. I had 2 in the main, and I think Cleave is very good in the right circumstance, or completely useless. Darius Cleave is great for getting over Camel as long as they don't punch first. Then you just lose the game on the spot. Definitely didn't happen this weekend. Using Cleave to buff Watcher over Barons is also kind of nice. And then using it on KaiSa to help ensure that she gets to Conquer was also relevant over the weekend. I like Cleave, I just don't know if I can keep 2 of them in the deck. And then if you noticed down here, Hui. Hui is a lot of fun. He's kind of unique. He lets you dig in the deck. He's not charmable. If you walk with him, discard a 2-drop, you not only do you get to draw and dig more, you get over Camel without using a single piece of interaction. So if you're playing with a ton of Master Yi's near you, you should consider Hui. He kind of underperformed in the post regional rebound. I played him in the sideboard specifically for the Master Yi matchup, and I just never really saw him. Like I did play against Master Yi, I just really didn't find Hui. And my friend Will, who was playing it quite a bit, said that Hui underperformed on the weekend. So kind of a fun tech to experiment with, especially if you're playing casuals. Hui is like actually really interesting. Definitely worth considering, and I'm going to put a couple more reps with him to see if I like him enough to put him in for PBG. Darius underperformed. I often was mulliganing this when I saw it, or when I saw it on Vision or Candlelit, I was dropping it because it just didn't often suit the need that I had. There was one entire game over the course of the entire weekend where I felt like Darius was the reason that I won the game. Darius is good in the right meta, in the right circumstance. I just don't I'm not necessarily convinced he's particularly good with a load of camels running around. I'm indecisive on this one. There's a lot of things on my list that I was very indecisive on over the weekend, and I'm glad now that I have plenty of time to test so I can experiment with things as we go. I just, it is what it I wish I had more time before this event. All right, let's move on first to the best of list from Hartford. This is Flamekiller, who again was one of the people in contention for best of KaiSa in Atlanta, and I just had a better run than he did. His list was Rockville Path, which is really good in the ambush meta, really solid against Orange Rengar, Vilemaw, etc. The problem with Rockville Path is we can't put Forerunners there, and he's a Believer, I believe. Yeah. So he's running 3, but you can't play it there. And unfortunately, the way that a lot of your games go, you'll fight at one battlefield. Like I conquer one battlefield, my opponent comes to that battlefield to respond, contest, get me off the battlefield, and then you back and forth. If you get to Rockville Path early, and then you play units and push them there, and you have point parity, it becomes very difficult to break. So that's really good. But if you're running Pharaoh's Forerunners, it makes your game plan a lot harder. And I kind of like how Sinzari's list plays around the Star Springs a bit better than his and mine. He was also on Voidgate. Voidgate can be a going second or a game 1 field. Same for Rockfall Path. It's one of those, with Candlelit and Voidgate, I flip-flop them depending on the game. If you're playing into LeBlanc, you want to play Candlelit game 1, so you can filter out Forerunners in case you see multiple, because usually you can't play more than one in that matchup, and if you play one, it's the turn leading up to lethal, or like you're absolutely certain that they don't have mirror image. Because if they mirror image KaiSa sacrifice, you can just lose the game right then. Because it happened. And then Arita's Greatest is just super good in this meta with a lot of people running either aggro or if they're running Aspirant's Climb. So being able to match Aspirant's Climb, or it's good field into Aurora. I'm a believer in having two battlefields that you like going into Aurora, so you can run them game 2, game 3 after you bring in your gear hate that's on the side. That's typically my strategy in that matchup. So let's go back over here. I liked it over there. You're going to see me looking up at the screen. So he was on 1 Bellows, not as good in yellow, but potentially a good call for the meta because it's not particularly good into Irelia, not particularly good into Master Yi, not particularly good into a lot of like the top end meta decks. It's fine into Diana, but it's actually really good against the rogue decks because Watch Your Falling Star is highly relevant and a lot of people don't respect it. But then also all of these 1 might units, you can just like snipe them. Like you destroy Ari with this card. All of the and Vex as well. You can the little cat with shield 2 and tank. You just snipe that little guy really early. I don't care that it's the only one I'm killing. I just like take tempo back immediately, get point tempo, and just lead the game from there. A lot of standard things. Third Yordle's interesting. I kind of want to ask him about it, why he decided to have third Yordle over third Noxus Hopeful. That is a very unique choice. I don't find Piercing Light to be particularly strong in the current meta, but maybe he had a different read that I did. I don't even know what matchups this is in for. Like maybe just playing for Void Gate games. It's not my thing. I would much rather have 2 Bellows than a Piercing Light Bellows. Granted, they're different. They do different things. They're just like... I guess the premium play for this is pseudo Falling Star, where you hit Diana in base, like all of the same things I talked about for Rocket Barrage, hitting Master Yi in base plus something on the field. It can be, I can see the relevancy, but it is a one of over a second Bellows is kind of unique to me. 2 Plundering Pro, 2 Student is incredibly strange. Pick one. Just pick one. You kind of always want Plundering Pro first if you're running it. And then Student is good in certain circumstances. Student's actually really good in 2E in a lot of like the buff decks, especially on Abandon Hall. I just kind of try to avoid fighting on Abandon Hall for those games because Irelia Fervent is one of the most toxic units in the game. And he also plays 3 Watchful Sentries, which is obviously I'm already on board with. And if you're going to run this setup and have 7, I would have 1 Student, 2 Poro, and then 3 Sentry, but there's probably some matchups where he just really wanted to have Students for and couldn't find space for the 3rd Plundering Poro. Retreat's a dead card. We don't need to run Retreat anymore, guys. We're not playing into a removal heavy meta. It counters Charm, I guess, and it does ramp. So it's not a 0 card, but I don't think it is good enough to justify the space in the deck, especially as just a one of. If there's a meta of a bunch of KaiSas running around, like that's why we had so many set 1, because this card's super good in the mirror. Rocket Barrage makes sense, but he has a Rocket Barrage and a Turn to Dust. That is a kind of unique choice, and I'm curious why he decided... Like, there's so many weird splits that this gentleman was using. 1 Smite, 1 Smoke, 1 Rocket Barrage, 1 Retreat, 1 Bellows, 1 Voidseeker, 1 Turn to Dust. It's just a little all over the place. And I'm not used to running this many one-ofs, because I think having a more consistent list matters a ton in an event like this. This worked out for him, and I don't know exactly what his opponents were, but I'm a big fan of more consistency. The forecasters are huge identity there. 2 Warp, 3 Watcher, a lot of standard things, and then like the non-important things are just kind of like they are what they are. I was a non-singularity for this event. Scarred by Not So Fast. I should have put them back in. They're actually very good. The problem with Singularity is you have to be very careful to not get abandoned or Not So Fasted. If that happens, 9 times out of 10 you lose that game. Like, it's a high risk, high reward card that is highly relevant in the right matchups and useless into others. It's premium into Diana. It's actually really good into Yi because it kills Rengar plus something. Obviously, it's useless into camels, but big removal is big removal. Hitting 2 elders doesn't really work because you only have 1 smoke in the stack. There's not really any Draven running around. Not very many tall units you'd want to be hitting with this. It's good. I'll try it. I'm curious. One idea that I have is to try this list, to try Sinzari's current list, and then we'll experiment, see what we liked about it and what we feel like we're missing out on by not playing the list that I brought to Hartford. And playing other people's lists, getting exposure to other thoughts and ideas, is how I grew a lot as a player. Back in set 1, I would play Randy's list, I played Alan's list, I played like a bunch of different people's KaiSa lists and experimented with them. And I figured out what I liked and what I didn't like, and that helped me grow a ton. And then eventually you tweak them to find where in the middle between those lists you'll find yourself. Sideboard, I don't know how I feel about Brynir. I don't think we need Brynir, but I'll put some reps on it. See how it goes. 1 progress day, I think we had the same read. Smite, Thermo, Eternatus. Unchecked power is kind of just an anti-Baron field, but it's also like, can be anti-Vex. It can be good in the right situation. Unchecked powder is goated, but it's kind of dead most of the time. And I kind of like dislike having a 1 of in the side that isn't a mirror of something else, because if you don't find it, like, you can't rely on it, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing to have, but unchecked power is kind of unique. I was on 2 of them at the beginning of the set in the sideboard, but came off of it because I don't feel like it was necessary in the meta. So let's move over to Sinzari's list. Pictures. We like pictures. Pretty pictures. Something to talk about. Forbidding Waste is really good in a Master Yi dominated meta. So I'm actually the most excited to start playing this battlefield. It's the most likely one that I was going to pick up after this event, and the one that I probably should have brought instead of Void Gate. I think that would have given me a lot of percentages in matchups that I lost, and could have changed the outcome of the weekend. Granted, I was starting Void Gate and I won all of my game 1s into Master Yi, I believe. So it is what it is. Starspring. This is unique because, according to Sinzari, he takes advantage of Starspring more than his opponents. And Inferna is a big reason for that. Using a turn 1 play to conquer the not Starspring battlefield into using KaiSa, conquering the Starspring battlefield, dropping Forerunner there, backing up KaiSa, getting ready to slam back on that opposite battlefield is highly relevant. And then if you have an opponent that's like, all right, cool, Camel, I'm going to punch first him, walk him in, and you're like, okay, I'll use my Inferna, save my Forerunner, and then return on the next, or use this Forerunner to overcome your might on the next turn, can definitely work well. It's also an aggro battlefield into Aurora. So this follows my pattern of having 2 battlefields that I really like going into Aurora, and maximizing opportunities for success. This is going first. This is going second, game 1, potentially, depending on the matchup. I don't want to see double Star Springs, I don't think, just generally, but I haven't given this list much of an opportunity. Sinzari is really interested in Brynir. He's a big fan. He doesn't like seeing 2 in most matchups. I'm not really sure what he's bringing the second in on, but I'll chat with him and see what how he approaches things. He has Eclipse instead of Smoke. This makes, again, a ton of sense if you're running multiple turn 1 players that have 1 might, because it gives you an opportunity to defend them if you'd like to. Also, if you end up pairing Eclipse with something, like if you Eclipse and Hextech Ray on the same turn to kill Watcher or whatever, you don't burn runes doing it. Like, you just use KaiSa Legend and you're fine. Also, the not having a negative of 1 is highly relevant, especially into LeBlanc. In this deck specifically, it's hyper relevant for Inferno's Watchful Sentries, but then also if you're playing into LeBlanc and you make their thing a 0, they can only get 1 white units out of their hook. That's pretty neat. I'm a big fan of that. Most of the time when you're pairing, though, you're going for blowout or lethal, so smoke is usually just fine anyway, or you're late game enough to where the extra rune burn doesn't really matter. So there's some thoughts each way. Granted, predict is one of my favorite keywords. I don't know why predict and vision are 2 different keywords. They're the same thing. And then longsword. Longsword is a non-defiable combat trick that you can use for recursive running in of your forerunners. So like, longsword works. I had one in the sideboard for the rebound, and it did come up once. Again, it's a one of. You don't expect to use it early, and if you have it in your hand, game 1, and you don't have to use it, you don't use it, and then if it shows up game 2, game 3, you can still have the opportunity to surprise your opponent. There's a lot of one-ofs in this list, like the other one, like Longsword, Turn to Dust, Voidseeker, Eclipse, Cleave, Smite, just tons of one-ofs in the deck. But, you know, it is what it is. The most interesting thing to me is Rengar. And I used Rengar set 2 for a little bit, just for fun, just to see if an aggro KaiSa list made sense. But the way you use Rengar is you push, like if your opponent is Master Yi with Camel on field and they're holding up 1 rune for Punch First, you walk a favored number into the Camel and they play Punch First. And you're like, cool, Rengar, +5. And then you guarantee get over Punch First, which could have saved me quite a bit over the course of the weekend. I'm a huge fan of Rengar. I kind of want to see if I can fit a second Rengar into the deck, just because it's fun and unexpected. Thermal Beams for Azir, Turn to Dust for Aurora. You can kind of play both, especially into Sever. We love Thermal Beams anyway. And then I think we talked about pretty much everything else up to this point. All right, let me think if there's anything more to chat about. Some things for y'all. This is incorrect, but I just wanted to show you an idea. Sideboard planning. If you take the grouping of decks that you expect to play into the most, and then build a plan for them, you can take notes and bring them into the venue and look at them between your games. But also, going through the mental process of trying to figure out what you're supposed to put in each matchup helps you in the moment. And you have to be flexible and determine, oh, this needs to change because I didn't see this from my opponent, or I'm anticipating this, or my opponent really disrespected this card, so that was one of the most influential things when it came to using a Cathian Rain in the side. If your opponent puts a ton of units on the field and disrespect Cathian Rain, it's a good player to put it in against, right? And some decks you just put it in anyway, but if your opponent is hyper respectful, never uses more than 2 units at a time, do you really want to put a Cathian Rain in your deck? Like, probably not. So what comes next? I'm going to put time on Sinzari's list and on Flamekiller's list and see what I feel like works well, and see what I feel like I'm missing out on by playing their versions of the deck. Then, Showdown's coming. Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. Which are different locations, I understand. Dallas and Fort Worth. DFW. I'm heading to Fort Worth for PPG. I will see you guys there. I'm excited to participate. I'm planning to bring KaiSa for one last hurrah, and after that, I think we'll probably have to start experimenting with more top end meta decks and stick to playing what deck I believe is the most likely for me to win the event. So if you're going to Dallas, Fort Worth for this event, I'm excited to see you there. And if not, I hope you have a wonderful day.